Hello everyone, welcome to the final of the Tamiya Ducati assembly. Here you can see we're going to install most of the detail up parts, starting with the rivets for the brake rotors. So you'll see here that I just put a little bit of super glue, use a toothpick to insert them, and then I kind of forced them in using this toothpick. On the subsequent ones, I actually switched over to a small pair of needle nose pliers to make sure they were seated all the way. And here's what the rotor looks like when everything's finished. Next, we're going to start to assemble the front shocks. If you happen to use this kit, I recommend not painting the shaft portion of these front forks. As you can see, it was a bit of a struggle to get this first piece seated. And here we're going to go ahead and glue the front fork assembly together right away. And then we're going to assemble the valves for the front shocks that sit on top of this upper portion of the fork. Got to be extremely cautious with these. They're extremely delicate, and I actually end up breaking one of them several times. Finally, we're going to glue on the fluid reservoir, and this is going to be the last piece of the detail upset. course already put on the decal that needs to go onto this part. So with the general assembly, we're going to start by putting the engine together. You will notice that I did not install the coolant hose manifold. You'll see later on, I really struggled with getting the hoses to line up. It took me a really long time to figure out why they don't line up properly, and then I realized I never put the manifold in, so you will see me do that shortly. Next up, we're going to take some Tamiya black panel liner, and we're going to use this to bring out some of the details in the engine instead of it just being a large silver block. It really does a great job of bringing out all that really great molding on here. A couple different ways you can do it. You can be super neat and careful and only hit the parts you want to hit, or you can do it like me, just glob it all on and then wipe the excess off with a Q-tip. I feel like this method gives it a little bit more of a used look. It makes it look like an actual engine would in a motorcycle or in a vehicle. I think it's a great tool. We're also going to get the radiator. Again, there's fantastic molding on these radiators, so I want to make sure that we really bring that out. Same method, put a ton on, wipe off the excess with a Q-tip. And now we're going to continue assembling the engine with the mufflers. On this Ducati, the exhaust comes out the bottom instead of out the back, so a little bit different than a lot of the motorcycles I'm used to. My one recommendation, the Tamiya included screwdriver is not the greatest thing in the world. If you can get your hands on a micro Phillips screwdriver, that would almost certainly work better than this. See this great scene here where my brain struggles to comprehend how exactly the exhaust is supposed to go. In the end, I was able to figure it out. And then the second muffler. and we're going to begin assembling the radiators and the coolant hoses. You can see on these hoses, I did go back and do the clamps with Molotow chrome paint, just to kind of bring them out a little bit more, and it did work better than the Tamiya X11 that they recommend using. And here I am gluing in the coolant manifold that I forgot to put in earlier, after I realized I couldn't get any of the coolant hoses to fit. And here you can see we have the chain, which was done in several different metallizers from splash paints, as you saw in previous videos, as well as some black panel liner. Here you want to make sure you don't glue the actual rotor down, as you do want it to be able to spin if you want the tires to spin. If not, you can feel free to glue that down. Now, unfortunately, due to a corrupted video, we lost a little bit here. You can see I now have the rear axle put in. You did miss a little bit of assembly there, but nothing too crazy. And we're just going to take over right here. And here you can see me cutting the hoses to match. The great thing is they give you this little template with each step on exactly how long the hoses need to be. I'd recommend cutting them a little bit longer. I'm not going to show you all the hoses because there's really not a lot to see with the black hose on a mostly black bike. But I just put a little dab of glue on each end that the hose is going to connect to and use a pair of pliers to install it. The only downside to using a pair of pliers is you will end up squeezing the tube, and then when you slide it on, you're going to have a vacuum in there, so you got to kind of work the tube to make it a tube again. You can see I had to trim this one down. I accidentally cut it a little bit too long. And next up, we're going to install these front forks. Now I should have gone back and sanded down this part of the front fork that mounts in here. Once I got everything together, it's extremely hard to turn the front forks. It really should be a lot easier than that, and that makes things a little bit difficult when you're trying to assemble everything a little bit later on. I also recommend not putting the screw in too tight. Again, that's going to make it harder to turn those front forks. And here we're going to assemble the rear wheel. The tires are vaguely directional, so I did my best to get them put on as best as I could in the correct direction. It's kind of hard to know for sure if they're supposed to be directional or not. I'm not a motorcycle expert, but I put them on in the way that I felt they would go if it was a car. And here we are putting the front tire together. As you can see, we already got the decals installed. Covered decals in some of my previous videos, so I kind of glossed over a lot of them in this one. Plus, you got a really good experience with putting the decals on the cladding. You can also see I drilled out the holes in the rotors, as I believe I showed in a previous video. There you can see what they look like once they're on the motorcycle. They look absolutely great. And here we're putting together the motorcycle stand. And here we're gluing the front fender on. You can see I didn't show you in previous videos, but I did in fact make it carbon fiber using carbon fiber decals from, I believe, Scale Motorsports. And then we're going to install the front tire. Again, it's important you don't tighten the screw too much or the front wheel won't turn. Again, might have been smart to sand down the peg a little bit so it fit better, but I didn't do that. And then we're going to install the front calipers. And here we're putting in another one of the brake hoses. And then we have some of these modules here. You can see I added some wiring to add a little bit of extra realism, although it did make it a little bit difficult to get this screw in. I also didn't know how long it should be, so I cut it a little bit longer. I did end up going back and cutting it down once I started putting the fairings on, because there just wasn't enough room. And you can see here, I actually looked up some images of the actual module for this motorcycle, which is where I got the wiring colors from. There's only 2 large wires coming out of that one. I think there was actually 3, but I didn't have the 3rd color, nor did I really have enough room. So just got as close as I could to the real thing. And then we have the exhaust heat shield under the seat. And this is where I realized that I never put the last screw in on the rest of these modules, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of those now. And then the rear pegs. And I guess the rear side fairings, we would call these. There's a little air tunnel that you need to glue in first, and then these get glued onto the motorcycle. You may notice that I did actually skip a step here because I had to paint the tail light the clear red. I was waiting for that to dry, so I skipped to this step and actually wound up pulling these back off in order to get the tail light installed, because the tail light does need to go on first. Here we're gluing the gas cap onto the gas tank. And here we're gluing the headlight together. Gas tank does just slide on, no glue required. And then we're going to install the windshield on the front fairing. And now we're gluing the tail light together. Again, I had to wait for this Tamiya clear to dry on this piece here before I could assemble it. And you'll see in the next part here that I did have to pull those rear fairings off. Once the camera pans up, you can see the tops are no longer attached. So I said to go ahead and glue them back in place after I got the tail light glued in. Again, no glue on the front fairing. It does just kind of snap into place there. As well as the seat, no glue on that, it just snaps into place. And here I am doing things out of order again. I had to pull off the seat and the fuel tank in order to get this piece installed. And then the side cladding goes on next. Again, no glue, just a couple of screws. Did have a little bit of difficulty lining this up with the front fairing, but after a little bit of maneuvering, we got it to work. This is the point where I realized I had to cut down the wiring for that module because I could not get the other side to fit. So I already had that cut down, and then we just get this side installed. They do also have a great little guide here telling you exactly which screw to use in which place to make sure you don't use the wrong size screw in the wrong place. And then we're going to assemble and attach the mirrors. For the mirror itself, it does include a metal transfer sticker. I don't really like these all that much. They almost never go on completely smooth, especially when you're gluing into something that's sunken in like this. You're going to see when it's all said and done, there's a little bit of a ripple in them. But I guess at the end of the day, they get the job done. And then here we have the rear turn signals and the license plate bracket. With that, the Tamiya Ducati Panigale is done. Unfortunately, I've had some issues with videos corrupting between transferring it from my old computer to my new one. So we lost some stuff here. Next video we're going to do is going to be something a little bit different. Unfortunately, I lost some videos on that one too. And we will proceed from there. As always, if you leave a comment, I'll do my best to get back to you. If you've never already subscribed, go ahead and do so. And I will see you all in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.